Did you know that Delta Force successfully invaded the White House? As crazy as it sounds, it actually happened. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. You guys have been enjoying the explainer videos. I'm David Hookstead with American Joyride. We're going to keep this fun. We're going to keep it relatively short, but we are going to talk about something that the general public has absolutely no idea happened. And that is when U.S. military commandos were tasked with taking down the White House. Now, it sounds like it's straight out of a movie, but it's actually 100% true. It happened for a lot of different reasons. We're going to get into the actual invasion breach plan, and then we're going to get into when Delta Force helped scheme up some stuff a couple years later. So in 1990, the Secret Service wanted to know if the White House had any weaknesses, had any easy points that could be attacked. Was there any way anyone could get in? So they went down to Fort Bragg and they tasked Delta Force with the mission to see if Delta Force, the best trained commandos in the United States military, could conduct this mission, could figure out the weaknesses. So first, let's start with, if you're watching this, you probably already know what Delta Force is. Congratulations. I appreciate you being a fan. But if you don't, Delta Force is a Tier 1 unit. It is the premier counterterrorism unit in the world. It is comprised of 4 assault squadrons. Those are A, B, C, and D, A and B being the first 2, C being stood up in the 90s, and then D coming a significant time after during the War on Terror. A lot of Army Rangers, a lot of Green Berets come into Delta Force. It requires you to go through selection, OTC, and by the time you get through Delta Force training, you are a hardened, seasoned operator. So it makes sense why the Secret Service would have asked them to come in and try to breach the White House. So what happened? It's pretty simple. The head of the president's detail at the time went down to Fort Bragg and explained the situation. And he pretty much said to him, hey, look, HW, we want to find out if there's any risks whatsoever to his home, the White House. Can you guys find a way in? Now, the Secret Service did set some ground rules for this invasion plan. They couldn't use any of the access they had to classified information. They could only do recon and open source information, so stuff they could find. Obviously, the internet wasn't a big thing, but stuff they could find in encyclopedias, newspapers, interviews, things of that nature were fair game for Delta Force, and then they could do recon. Now, Delta Force trained for this mission for roughly 8 weeks. And essentially what it came down to is they determined their best ability to get into the White House was by halo jumping in. Now, what does halo jumping mean? That is a high altitude, low opening on your parachute. Essentially, you fly really, really, really high. You wait till you're really, really low to pull your parachute. There's a couple reasons for this. There's a couple reasons why it can be incredibly dangerous and hard to track. Is that you can get below radar level, is my understanding, open your chute, and then no one even knows what happened because you were coming down so fast. You're free falling. They didn't pick you up. I'm not a parachute expert. I don't pretend to be. I don't understand. I've never halo jumped in my life. I know a lot of guys who obviously have. That is my understanding of what makes halo jumping so great. Obviously, you also have a high altitude, high opening, but means you're coming down very slow. There's a good chance they could see you. So Delta Force, the team of Delta Force commandos decides we're going to jump in. We're going to open our parachutes nice and low. And moments before the mock invasion unfolds, Secret Service had their live ammunition taken away from them just mere seconds before it happened. And sure enough, Delta Force operators were able to get on the ground without anyone noticing, and boom. One Secret Service agent was quoted as saying they were there before a single person had any chance to do anything about it. And that is how Delta Force successfully overtook the Secret Service, outsmarted them, invaded the White House, successfully completing the mission. However, and legend has it, and I've not seen this photo, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I have heard, and I do believe it might have even been publicly said, that the Delta Force operators came in so fast and so hard that they took an infrared photo of themselves that now hangs in the Secret Service office at the White House, or it did for some time, kind of as a reminder that Delta Force outsmarted the Secret Service. They then decided what they were going to do after they realized Delta Force had just kicked their butt. They installed highly sensitive technology to pick up parachuters coming in all over the White House. So they asked Delta Force to try it again, do the same thing now that they'd updated the tech, and Delta Force was found coming in, and they were stopped by the Secret Service, thus proving that the hole they had found had been successfully plugged. However, this was not the only time This was not the only time that the White House needed Delta Force to help them. They asked Delta Force again in the 1990s to devise different plans, different possibilities for what an attack could look like other than the parachute one. And Delta Force came up with two. They said you could fly essentially a small plane into the building or helicopter loaded up with people. And while some would die in the crash, enough would be able to get off that would cause a significant problem and likely overwhelm the Secret Service in the area. That was option number one. Option number two was you could have multiple fence jumpers in overwhelming numbers. And while some of them would certainly be stopped, not all of them would be. So those are the two things that Delta Force came up with. And obviously, measures have been taken since. So next time you hear someone talk about, did Delta Force outsmart the Secret Service? Did Delta Force invade the White House? That can't be true. How did the military invade the White House? It's actually 100% true. It's 100% true. It's one of the coolest stories that the public has never heard of. It is shocking, but it is 100% true. Delta Force did successfully, against what would seem impossible odds, halo jump in. Again, that's a high altitude, low opening. I believe they did it out of a small plane. I don't know that for sure. It would make more sense to do it out of a modified small plane that could reach incredibly high altitudes. But anyways, that's the story. Delta Force successfully invaded the White House on the night of October 14th, 1990, after 8 weeks of training, and Secret Service couldn't do a thing to stop them. Had no idea they were coming. And that is a fun reminder that Delta Force, when they decide to come knocking, even against the best protection detail in the world, the Secret Service and all the gear and technology at the White House, they still couldn't stop them. So if you ever find yourself playing trivia and someone says, what military unit successfully invaded the White House in a mock attack? Delta Force.